The coffee was still steaming in my cup when the email arrived. 8:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning that had started like any other in my 27 years at Hartwell Manufacturing. Subject line: please see me in my office immediately. Marcus. Marcus Bradley had been my supervisor for the past 3 years, ever since the company restructured and brought in fresh blood to modernize operations. At 38, he was 15 years younger than me, with an MBA from Wharton and the kind of aggressive confidence that came from never having experienced real failure. I saved the quarterly report I'd been working on and walked down the hallway to his corner office, the same route I'd taken thousands of times over nearly 3 decades. The walls were lined with photos from company events spanning my entire career. Christmas parties, product launches, team-building retreats. In half of them, I was standing somewhere in the background, always present, always reliable. "Robert, come in and close the door," Marcus said without looking up from his laptop. His office was decorated with motivational posters about disruption and thinking outside the box, the kind of corporate inspiration that made my teeth ache. I sat down in the chair across from his desk, the same chair where I'd received performance reviews, project assignments, and congratulations on another successful year of exceeding expectations. "Robert, I'm going to cut right to the chase here. We're making some organizational changes, and unfortunately, your position is being eliminated." The words hit me like a physical blow. After 27 years, countless overtime hours, weekends spent troubleshooting production issues, and a track record of reliability that had become legendary in our industry, I was being terminated. Eliminated? Budget cuts. We're streamlining operations and focusing on younger, more adaptable talent. "Marcus, I'm 2 weeks away from my 27-year bonus. 11 days, actually." I'm aware of the timing. The way he said it, completely matter-of-fact, with no hint of regret or acknowledgement of the cruelty, made something cold settle in my stomach. "You're firing me 11 days before I'm eligible for a bonus I've earned over nearly 3 decades? Robert, let's be honest here. You're 53 years old. You've been doing the same job for over 2 decades. The industry is changing, and we need people who can adapt to new technologies and methodologies. I've adapted to every change this company has implemented. I trained on the new systems, learned the updated processes, mentored dozens of younger employees. And that's all appreciated. But adaptation isn't the same thing as innovation. We need people who can think outside traditional frameworks." I stared at him. "Marcus, I've solved more production problems and saved this company more money than anyone in the building. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results." "What does that mean?" "It means we're building a team for the next decade, not the last decade. And I'm not part of that future? Robert, I'm trying to handle this professionally. You're a good employee, but you're not the right fit for where we're headed." He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a manila envelope, sliding it across the desk toward me. "This is your severance package. 2 weeks' pay, continuation of health benefits for 60 days, and a positive reference letter." I picked up the envelope but didn't open it. "What about my bonus? What about it? I'm 11 days away from my 27-year milestone. The bonus is part of my compensation package." "Robert, you need to be employed on the anniversary date to receive milestone bonuses. That's clearly stated in the employee handbook." "So you're timing my termination to avoid paying a bonus I've earned over 27 years? Marcus leaned back in his chair, and for the first time since I'd entered his office, he looked directly at me. "Robert, let's not make this more difficult than it needs to be. You're getting a fair severance package. Sign the papers by Friday, and we can all move forward professionally. And if I don't sign by Friday, then you get the minimum severance required by law, which is nothing." I looked at the envelope in my hands, then back at Marcus. "No golden handshake for fossils? Excuse me? That's what you said at the management meeting last month. We can't afford golden handshakes for fossils who can't keep up with the modern marketplace." Marcus's face flushed slightly. "Robert, I wasn't referring to you specifically. You were referring to exactly me, and everyone in that room knew it. Look, this conversation is getting unproductive. You have until Friday to sign the severance agreement. I suggest you take the weekend to think about it." I stood up from the chair, still holding the envelope. "Marcus, can I ask you something?" What? In your 3 years here, how much money have you saved the company? That's not really relevant. I've saved Hartwell Manufacturing approximately $2.8 million through process improvements, problem solving, and efficiency modifications. I have documentation going back 27 years. Robert, I've mentored 43 junior employees, 31 of whom are still with the company. I've worked through 8 major equipment failures, 12 production crises, and 4 ownership changes. That's all very impressive, but I've missed my daughter's birthday parties, my son's baseball games, and my wife's anniversary dinners to make sure this company's operations ran smoothly. Robert, I understand you're upset. I'm not upset, Marcus. I'm disappointed. In you, in this company, and in myself for believing that loyalty meant something. I walked toward the door. Robert, Marcus called after me, think carefully about your decision. This is a generous offer, and you don't want to burn bridges. I stopped and turned back to look at him. Marcus, in 27 years, I've never burned a bridge, but I've learned to recognize when someone else is trying to burn one for me. I left his office with my dignity intact and my future uncertain. I cleaned out my desk in complete silence while my colleagues pretended not to notice what was happening. 27 years of professional life reduced to a cardboard box. Family photos, a coffee mug my daughter had made in pottery class, a small cactus that had somehow survived in the fluorescent-lit environment for 8 years. Robert, Jennifer Martinez, one of the junior engineers I'd mentored, appeared at my cubicle. Is everything okay? I'm leaving the company, Jen. Leaving? Like retiring? Something like that. But what about your bonus? Isn't your 27-year anniversary next week? Timing didn't work out. Jennifer's face went pale. They fired you? 11 days before your bonus? Jen, it's complicated. Don't worry about it. Robert, that's horrible. After everything you've done for this place? I finished packing my personal items and looked around the cubicle that had been my second home for more than half my adult life. The computer where I'd solved countless technical problems. The filing cabinet full of process improvements and efficiency reports. The phone I'd answered at all hours to help with production emergencies. Jen, take care of yourself. And remember what I taught you about the hydraulic systems. They're more sensitive than anyone realizes. Robert, this isn't right. No, it's not, but it's done. I carried my box to the parking lot, loaded it into my Honda Accord, the same reliable car I'd been driving for 12 years, and sat behind the wheel for a long moment before starting the engine. 27 years. 10,000 days of showing up, doing excellent work, supporting my colleagues, and building something meaningful. Ended with a 15-minute conversation and a severance package designed to cheat me out of money I'd earned through nearly 3 decades of dedicated service. I drove home to the house I'd bought with my Hartwell Manufacturing salary, the house where I'd raised my children and built a life around the stability of long-term employment. My wife, Carol, was in the garden, tending to the roses we'd planted 15 years ago when we finally felt financially secure enough to invest in landscaping. "You're home early," she said, looking up from her pruning shears. I got fired. The shears fell from her hands. What? Marcus called me into his office this morning and terminated my position. Budget cuts, he said. But your bonus, 11 days too early. Carol stared at me, then at the card box in my hands, then back at me. They can't do that. Can they? After 27 years, they can't just fire you right before your milestone bonus. Apparently they can. Robert, we've been counting on that bonus. The new roof, Michael's college tuition, the repairs on the deck. I know. What are we going to do? I don't know yet. That evening, I sat in my study looking through the severance agreement Marcus had given me. 2 weeks' pay for 27 years of service. Health insurance for 60 days. A non-disclosure clause that prevented me from discussing the circumstances of my termination. And a non-compete agreement that would prevent me from working for any of Hartwell Manufacturing's competitors for 18 months. It was a punishment disguised as a package. I opened my laptop and started going through my files. 27 years of performance reviews, all excellent. Commendation letters from clients. Documentation of cost savings and process improvements. awards for safety, efficiency, and teamwork. And then I found something interesting. 3 months ago, I'd received an email from HR about updating my employee information for the upcoming milestone bonus program. The email specifically stated that employees approaching milestone anniversaries should verify their information to ensure proper processing of their bonuses. I'd responded immediately, confirming my start date and current position. Someone in HR had replied with a confirmation that my 27-year bonus was scheduled for processing on my anniversary date. Marcus had known about my bonus for months. This wasn't a sudden budget cut or an unfortunate timing coincidence. This was a calculated decision to terminate my employment before I became eligible for money I'd already earned. I kept digging through my files and found something else interesting. Over the past 18 months, 4 other long-term employees had been terminated within weeks of their milestone anniversaries. Janet Morrison, fired 3 weeks before her 20-year bonus. Paul Rodriguez, terminated 10 days before his 15-year bonus. Margaret Chen, let go 5 days before her 25-year bonus. All of them had been given the same explanation: budget cuts and organizational restructuring. All of them had been replaced by younger, cheaper employees. This wasn't about my performance or my ability to adapt to new technologies. This was about avoiding payouts to long-term employees while maintaining a workforce of young, low-cost workers who hadn't yet earned significant benefits. I called Janet Morrison. "Janet, it's Robert Walker from Hartwell. I hope you don't mind me calling." "Robert, how are you? I heard you were still there." "Not anymore. I got fired today." "Oh no." "Let me guess. Budget cuts?" "Budget cuts. 11 days before my 27-year bonus." Janet was quiet for a moment. "Robert, they did the same thing to me, and to Paul Rodriguez, and to Margaret Chen." "I know, I've been looking through the records. It's a pattern. They're systematically firing long-term employees right before their milestone bonuses come due." "Janet, did you ever consider legal action?" "I talked to a lawyer. He said it would be difficult to prove age discrimination or intentional timing. Companies have the right to terminate employees for business reasons. Even if the timing is suspicious? Even then, unless you can prove they're specifically targeting older employees or deliberately avoiding bonus payments, it's hard to build a case." "What if there's a pattern? What if it's not just 1 or 2 isolated incidents?" "Robert, what are you thinking?" I looked at the files spread across my desk, the documentation of 4 terminations, all strategically timed to avoid milestone bonuses. I'm thinking that maybe it's time someone stood up to these people. "Be careful, Robert. Hartwell Manufacturing has expensive lawyers and deep pockets." "So do I." That wasn't entirely true. I had savings, but not the kind of money required to fight a protracted legal battle against a major corporation. But I had something else. I had 27 years of documentation, a clear pattern of abuse, and the kind of righteous anger that comes from being betrayed by people you trusted with your career. More importantly, I had nothing left to lose. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in bed next to Carol, staring at the ceiling and thinking about 27 years of my life that had just been erased with a 15-minute conversation. I thought about the time I'd worked 18 straight hours to fix a critical equipment failure that would have shut down production for a week. I thought about the weekend I'd spent in the office, missing my son's championship game, to finish a project that saved the company $500,000. I thought about all the young engineers I'd trained, all the problems I'd solved, all the crises I'd managed, the times I'd stayed late to help colleagues meet their deadlines, the times I'd come in early to prepare for difficult client meetings. I thought about Marcus Bradley, with his MBA and his motivational posters, sitting in his corner office making decisions about people's lives based on spreadsheets and budget projections. At 3 a.m., I got up and went back to my study. I opened my laptop and started writing. Not a resignation letter or a complaint to HR. Something bigger. I started documenting everything. Every conversation with Marcus about older employees. Every meeting where cost-cutting through workforce reduction had been discussed. Every comment about fresh blood and younger talent. I documented the pattern of terminations. Janet Morrison, Paul Rodriguez, Margaret Chen, and now me. 4 long-term employees fired within days of becoming eligible for significant milestone bonuses. I calculated the money Hartwell Manufacturing had saved by avoiding these bonuses. Janet's 20-year bonus would have been $40,000. Paul's 15-year bonus was $22,500. Margaret's 25-year bonus was $62,500. My 27-year bonus was $67,500. Nearly $200,000 in milestone bonuses avoided through strategically timed terminations. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about the pattern of targeting older, more expensive employees and replacing them with younger, cheaper workers. It was about a corporate culture that viewed long-term loyalty as a liability instead of an asset. It was about the fundamental betrayal of people who dedicated their careers to building something they thought was meaningful. By 6 a.m., I had a comprehensive document outlining what I believed was a systematic pattern of age discrimination and bonus avoidance at Hartwell Manufacturing. At 8 a.m., I made a phone call. Davidson and Associates Employment Law, this is Rebecca. I'd like to schedule a consultation with Mr. Davidson regarding a potential age discrimination case. Of course. Can you give me a brief summary of the situation? I was fired yesterday after 27 years with the same company, 11 days before I was eligible for a significant milestone bonus. I believe there's a pattern of similar terminations targeting older employees. Mr. Davidson can see you this afternoon at 2 p.m. Can you bring documentation of your employment history and the circumstances of your termination? I have extensive documentation. Excellent. We'll see you at 2 p.m. Thomas Davidson was a labor attorney in his 60s who'd built his practice on employment discrimination cases. His office was filled with legal books, case files, and photos with clients who'd won significant settlements against major corporations. Mr. Walker, tell me about your situation. I spent the next hour walking him through my employment history, the circumstances of my termination, and the pattern I'd identified of similar terminations. This is interesting, Davidson said, reviewing my documentation. You've done excellent research here. Is it enough for a case? Potentially. Age discrimination cases are difficult to prove. But when there's a clear pattern of targeting older employees, especially around milestone events like bonuses, it becomes more compelling. What would a case like this involve? We'd file complaints with the EECC and potentially pursue a lawsuit. If we can establish a pattern of systematic discrimination, we might be able to pursue this as a class action on behalf of all affected employees. What are the risks? Time, money, and stress. These cases can take years to resolve, and corporations have significant resources to fight them. What are the potential outcomes? If we win, you could receive back pay, front pay, your milestone bonus, punitive damages, and attorney fees. If we pursue it as a class action and win, Hartwell Manufacturing could face significant financial penalties and be required to change their employment practices. I thought about Carol's garden, about the new roof we needed, about my son's college, tuition. I thought about Janet Morrison, Paul Rodriguez, and Margaret Chen. I thought about all the other long-term employees who might be next. Mr. Davidson, I want to pursue this. Mr. Walker, I have to ask, are you doing this for the money or for the principle? Both, but mostly for the principle. Good. Principal cases are the ones worth fighting. We spent another hour discussing strategy, timeline, and documentation. Davidson would file complaints with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and begin building a case for systematic age discrimination. Mr. Walker, there's one more thing we should discuss. What's that? Publicity? Cases like this sometimes attract media attention, especially when they involve large corporations and systematic discrimination. Are you prepared for that possibility? I thought about Marcus Bradley sitting in his corner office, making decisions about people's lives based on their age and their proximity to expensive milestone bonuses. Mr. Davidson, I've spent 27 years being quietly professional. I think it's time I was loudly professional. Excellent. Let's make some noise. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a man with a mission. I contacted Janet Morrison, Paul Rodriguez, and Margaret Chen, explaining Davidson's assessment that we might have grounds for a class action lawsuit. All three were interested in joining the case. I reached out to other former Hartwell Manufacturing employees who'd been terminated in the past 2 years. I found 6 more cases of long-term employees being fired shortly before becoming eligible for milestone bonuses or other significant benefits. I documented conversations with current employees who confirmed that the company was systematically replacing older workers with younger, cheaper alternatives. Most importantly, I found an ally inside the company. Jennifer Martinez, the junior engineer I'd mentored, called me 3 days after my termination. "Robert, I've been thinking about what happened to you, and I'm disgusted. Jen, you need to be careful. Don't put your job at risk because of my situation." "Robert, it's not just your situation. Since you left, they've made comments about other older employees who might not be adaptable enough for the new direction." "What kind of comments?" Marcus made a joke about cleaning house of people who've been here too long. He said the company needs energy instead of experience. "Jen, would you be willing to document those conversations?" "You mean like write them down?" "I mean like record them?" "Robert, I can't record my supervisor." "You can if he's discriminating against employees based on their age. That's illegal, and exposing illegal activity is protected." "I could get fired." "You could get fired anyway if they decide you're too expensive or too close to a milestone bonus." Jennifer was quiet for a moment. What would I need to do? "Just document conversations where age discrimination is discussed. Dates, times, who was present, what was said." "And if I do this, it could help your case?" "It could help everyone's case." "Jen, this isn't just about me. This is about a pattern of systematic discrimination that's going to continue until someone stops it." "Okay, I'll help." 3 days later, Jennifer called with explosive information. "Robert, I was in a meeting this morning where Marcus was discussing the budget for next year. He specifically mentioned that the company could save almost $200,000 by transitioning older employees before their milestone bonuses come due." "He said that in a meeting?" "He said it in front of 5 other managers. He called it strategic workforce optimization." "Jen, please tell me you documented this." I wrote down everything immediately after the meeting. Direct quotes. Who was there? What time it happened? "You're amazing." "Robert, there's more. They're planning to terminate 3 more long-term employees before the end of the year. Mary Patterson, who's 6 months away from her 30-year bonus. Frank Williams, who's approaching his 20-year anniversary. And Sandra Kim, who's eligible for her 15-year bonus in February. They're planning terminations specifically around bonus dates?" Marcus called it managing our benefit obligations. He said the company can't afford to pay milestone bonuses to people who aren't going to be part of the future workforce. This was exactly what we needed. Direct evidence that Hartwell Manufacturing was systematically targeting older employees to avoid paying earned benefits. I called Davidson immediately. "Tom, we have a smoking gun." "What kind of smoking gun?" I explained Jennifer's information about the meeting and the planned terminations. "Mr. Walker, this changes everything. If we can document that the company is planning terminations specifically to avoid bonus payments, we have a clear case of discriminatory intent." "What's our next step?" "We accelerate our timeline. I'm filing complaints with the EECC immediately, and I'm going to contact the Department of Labor about potential violations of the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, ERISA. If Hartwell is systematically denying earned benefits to employees, that's an ERISA violation with serious financial penalties." "How serious?" "Potentially millions in fines, plus requirements to restore all denied benefits to affected employees." "Tom, there's something else we should consider." "What's that?" "Media attention. If we can get this story in front of the public, it puts pressure on Hartwell to settle quickly and change their practices." "Do you have media contacts?" "I have something better. I have a story that's outrageous enough to get attention." "What do you mean?" "A company that fires loyal employees days before their earned bonuses to save money on benefits. That's not just employment law. That's human interest. It's the kind of story that makes people angry." Davidson was quiet for a moment. "Mr. Walker, are you prepared for the scrutiny that comes with media attention?" "Tom, I've spent 27 years being the quiet, loyal employee who never made waves. It's time to make some waves." "All right, let's make some waves." The first story broke on a Wednesday morning in the Seattle Times business section. The headline read, "Local manufacturing company accused of firing employees to avoid bonus payments." The article detailed my case and the pattern of terminations we'd identified. It quoted Davidson about the legal claims we were pursuing and included a response from Hartwell Manufacturing's corporate communications department denying any systematic discrimination. By Thursday, the story had been picked up by 3 other local news outlets and 2 industry publications. By Friday, it was trending on social media. The comment sections of every article were filled with similar stories from other companies and expressions of outrage from people who'd experienced similar treatment. This happened to my father at his company. 30 years of service, fired 2 weeks before his pension vested. Corporate greed at its worst. These people have no shame. Hartwell Manufacturing should be boycotted until they do the right thing. On Friday afternoon, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Hartwell Manufacturing. It was Marcus Bradley. Robert, we need to talk. No, we don't. Robert, this media situation is getting out of hand. You're damaging the company's reputation over a simple employment decision. Simple employment decision? Marcus, you fired me 11 days before my 27-year bonus to save money. That's not how it happened. It's exactly how it happened. And it's exactly how it happened to Janet Morrison, Paul Rodriguez, Margaret Chen, and how many others. Robert, look, maybe we can work something out. Work something out how? Maybe we could offer you a settlement, something fair that recognizes your years of service. Like my 27-year bonus? We could discuss that. Marcus, the time for discussion was before you fired me. Now we're in the legal system. Robert, you don't want to go to war with us. We have resources you can't match. You're right. I can't match your resources, but I can match your determination. Robert, Marcus, I spent 27 years being the loyal employee who never caused problems. You mistook that loyalty for weakness. That was your mistake. I hung up. 2 hours later, Davidson called. Robert, I just got off the phone with Hartwell's legal department. They want to discuss settlement. What kind of settlement? They're offering your full 27-year bonus plus an additional payment to cover the other class members. How much additional payment? Enough to cover everyone's missed bonuses, plus punitive damages. And in exchange, non-disclosure agreements and withdrawal of all legal complaints. Tom, what's your recommendation? Honestly, I think we should push for more. This media attention has them scared, and scared companies make generous offers. More how? Policy changes. Requirements that they change their employment practices to prevent this from happening to other employees. And if they refuse, then we continue with the lawsuit and the EECC complaint. We make this as public and as expensive as possible until they agree to meaningful changes. Tom, I want the policy changes. This isn't just about getting my bonus. This is about making sure they can't do this to other people. Understood. I'll counter their offer with requirements for policy changes and ongoing monitoring. Monday morning brought more media coverage. This time, the story had reached national business publications. Forbes ran an article titled, "The Hidden Cost of Corporate Cost-Cutting: How Companies Cheat Loyal Employees Out of Earned Benefits." The Wall Street Journal followed with an editorial about the broader trend of corporations avoiding benefit obligations through strategic terminations. Most damaging for Hartwell Manufacturing, industry trade publications began reporting that several major clients were reviewing their relationships with the company in light of the negative publicity. Tuesday morning, Davidson called with news. Robert, Hartwell just made a much more substantial offer. How substantial? Full bonuses for all affected employees, plus punitive damages totaling $1.2 million. Policy changes requiring transparency in all termination decisions involving employees within 1 year of milestone anniversaries, and establishment of an independent ombudsman to review employment practices. They agreed to policy changes? They agreed to everything. Robert, this media attention has cost them more in lost business than it would cost to settle generously and fix their practices. What about non-disclosure agreements? They're waiving the non-disclosure requirements. They want this to go away, and they're willing to let everyone talk about it if it means ending the negative publicity. I thought about Janet Morrison, Paul Rodriguez, Margaret Chen, and all the other employees who'd been treated as disposable by a company they'd served loyally. Tom, what's your professional opinion? I think it's an excellent settlement. You get everything you wanted. Your bonus, recognition of the wrongdoing, policy changes to protect other employees, and the right to tell your story. And Hartwell gets to end the negative publicity and move on. Yes, but they move on with new policies that prevent this from happening again. Tom, I accept the settlement. Excellent. I'll have the paperwork drawn up. Tom, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think this will actually change how they treat employees? Robert, I think this will change how every company in their industry thinks about strategics, terminations around benefit dates. Word gets around in business communities. No company wants to be the next Hartwell Manufacturing. So this was bigger than just my case? Much bigger. You didn't just win your bonus back, Robert. You started a conversation about corporate responsibility and employee dignity that's going to affect thousands of workers. Good. The settlement was finalized 3 weeks later. I received my full 27-year bonus, plus additional compensation for the emotional distress and career disruption caused by my wrongful termination. But the real victory came in the policy changes Hartwell Manufacturing was required to implement. All termination decisions involving employees within 18 months of milestone anniversaries now required approval from an independent review board. The company was required to provide detailed justification for any layoffs or restructuring that disproportionately affected older employees. Most importantly, they were required to publish annual reports on their employment practices, including demographic data on terminations and promotional decisions. The ombudsman position was filled by a retired federal employment judge with the authority to investigate complaints and recommend corrective actions. 6 months after the settlement, I received a call from Jennifer Martinez. Robert, I wanted to thank you. For what? For standing up. The culture here has completely changed. Marcus was transferred to a different division, and our new management actually values experience. I'm glad to hear that. Robert, there's something else. Mary Patterson, Frank Williams, and Sandra Kim, the 3 employees who were going to be terminated, they all received promotions instead. Promotions? The new management realized that losing experienced employees was actually hurting productivity and client relationships. They've implemented a mentorship program that pairs senior employees with junior staff. So the company is actually benefiting from treating employees better? Imagine that. A year later, I was contacted by a reporter from the Harvard Business Review who was writing an article about the long-term effects of the Hartwell Manufacturing case. Mr. Walker, our research suggests that your case has influenced employment practices at companies throughout your industry. Are you aware of the broader impact? I hoped it would have a broader impact. Our interviews with HR professionals suggest that companies are much more careful about termination decisions involving older employees, particularly around benefit dates. Good. Mr. Walker, looking back, do you have any regrets about how you handled the situation? I thought about that question for a long time. I regret that it took 27 years for me to stand up for myself. I regret that other employees had to go through what I went through before someone finally said enough. But you don't regret the legal action? No. Sometimes the only way to change a system is to force it to change. What advice would you give to other employees facing similar situations? Document everything. Trust your instincts. And remember that loyalty should go both ways. Anything else? Don't let anyone make you feel like you're asking for too much when you're asking for basic dignity and respect. 2 years after my termination, I was invited to speak at a conference for employment attorneys about workplace age discrimination. Standing at the podium, looking out at an audience of lawyers who spent their careers fighting for employee rights, I thought about how much had changed since that Tuesday morning when Marcus Bradley had called me into his office. 2 years ago, I began. I was a loyal employee who believed that hard work and dedication would be rewarded with fair treatment. I was wrong about that belief, but I was right about something else. I paused, thinking about the journey from that devastating conversation to this moment of advocacy. I was right to believe that I deserved better, that 27 years of service deserved better, that the promise of earned benefits should mean something. The settlement I received wasn't just about money, though the money was important. It was about recognition that what happened to me was wrong, and about changes that would prevent it from happening to other people. But the real victory wasn't in the courtroom or in the media coverage, or even in the policy changes at Hartwell. Manufacturing. The real victory was in remembering my own worth, in refusing to accept that loyalty and dedication could be discarded for the convenience of budget projections. For 27 years, I defined myself by my job. When they took that job away, I had to learn who I was without it. And what I learned was that I was someone worth fighting for. I looked out at the audience of attorneys who dedicated their careers to fighting for people like me. Every case you take, every client you represent, every settlement you negotiate, you're not just fighting for money or policy changes. You're fighting for human dignity. You're fighting for the idea that people matter more than profit margins. And sometimes, when you win those fights, you change more than employment practices. You change lives. As I stepped down from the podium, I thought about Carol's garden, thriving with the security that came from standing up for ourselves. I thought about my son, heading to college with tuition that was paid in full. I thought about the new roof over our heads, purchased not with the bonus I'd earned, but with the settlement I'd fought for. But mostly, I thought about a lesson that had taken me 53 years to learn. That respect is something you have to demand, not something you can earn through silent loyalty. 27 years of faithful service had earned me a bonus, but standing up for myself had earned me something more valuable. It had earned me the knowledge that I was worth fighting for. And in the end, that knowledge was worth more than any amount of money a company could have paid me or tried to cheat me out of. The final irony was that Marcus Bradley's attempt to save the company money by avoiding my bonus had cost them far more than they ever would have paid. The settlement, legal fees, lost business, and reputation damage added up to millions of dollars. But more than that, it had cost them something that couldn't be measured in dollars: the trust of their employees and the respect of their industry. 6 months after the settlement, I heard that Marcus Bradley had left Hartwell Manufacturing. According to Jennifer, he'd taken a position with a smaller company at a significant reduction in salary. His reputation in the industry had been damaged by the case, and his aggressive cost-cutting methods were no longer seen as innovative leadership, but as short-sighted, penny-wise, pound-foolish management. Meanwhile, I'd started doing consulting work for other manufacturing companies, helping them develop fair employment practices and avoid the kind of legal problems that had cost Hartwell so dearly. It was satisfying work that paid well and allowed me to use my 27 years of experience in a positive way. Carol often joked that getting fired was the best thing that had ever happened to our family. The settlement had given us financial security we'd never had before, and my consulting work was more fulfilling than anything I'd done in my corporate career. But the real satisfaction came from the letters I received from other employees who'd been inspired by my case to stand up for themselves. A letter from a 58-year-old engineer in Michigan who'd successfully challenged his termination and received his pension benefits. A note from a woman in Texas whose company had suddenly become much more careful about age-related comments after her HR department learned about the Hartwell case. An email from a group of employees in Ohio who'd used my story as leverage to negotiate better retirement benefits with their employer. Each letter reminded me that standing up for yourself isn't just about personal vindication. It's about creating a world where other people don't have to face the same injustices.